this is Jordan Castillo Price, and I'm here to talk about the ABCs of Spellcraft with Nick Hudson. Hi, Nick.
Hello, I am Nick Hudson. I am the narrator for the audiobook version of the ABCs of Spellcraft.
And we just had some questions from readers that we wanted to talk about in sort of a random scattershot Q&A manner. What was the most fun part of Spellcraft to write? And actually, you can be thinking about this, Nick. I'm going to ask you what was the most fun part to read afterward, too. Okay, so what was the most fun part to write? The scenes where they're actually using the magic itself is really fun. And also the scenes where I get to introduce a new person are very fun. I market the ABCs of Spellcraft as a cozy, even though it's not really much of a mystery, or the mystery is sort of subtle. There's not a dead body cropping up that they then have to solve a mystery of who done it. But in paranormal cozies in particular, I actually read many sort of to try to prepare and get like the rhythms of the rhythms of the comedy and just sort of the feel of the book. And it seems to me that in paranormal cozy, it's about wacky characters doing crazy stuff within the framework of here's how the magic system is. And so I love introducing new characters. That's really fun for me. And I have a portion of each book that I call in my mind the Rube Goldberg. And for anyone who doesn't know, a Rube Goldberg machine is a big elaborate machine like you would see on Pee-wee's Playhouse, where, you know, like a boot kicks a dog and the dog jumps and lights a candle and burns down a rope and blah, blah, blah. And then a fried egg comes out the end. And so every Spellcraft book has either a literal Rube Goldberg in it, or it has like a Rube Goldberg situation or analogy of some sort in it. And so I do like doing the Rube Goldbergs, but they're touchy to explain, but I feel that they're intrinsic in upholding the flavor of the world. So for me, that's the fun part of the book to write, is the weird characters being weird and the Rube Goldberg. So what do you think, Nick? What's your fun part to voice?
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the Rube Goldberg first, because I hadn't put my finger on it, but that is, I think, my favorite part of them as a reader, not as a speaker, but as a reader, finding those moments of, this is okay. So the Spellcraft is doing this and this, and it looks like it's doing A, but in fact it's triggering thing B, which is exactly what you said. I have nothing clever to add to it, except that's my favorite part to read. The narrating part, really the entire third book for me, because I got to play with the most different voices. There's different voices in all of them, but beyond Urian Dixon, the third one has that is Spa. Something Stinks at the Spa. There's the four different denizens around the hotel, and getting to see them interact with each other a little bit, and with Urian Dixon a bunch, and playing with trying to change those dialects on the fly, and can I switch over and do that, and it sounds great when I do. That's a really fun thing to get to play with, is those parts.
There's one neat part in Spa where three old ladies corner Yuri and start questioning him. And I was listening to it specifically, and I'm like, yeah, Nick did a different old lady for each one. That's awesome. Yep.
I was at the this very haircut, getting a haircut a little bit ago, and talking to the barber about what I do and about narration. He said, "Oh, so you do different voices? Do a voice for me," which is,
that sounds awful. That really put you on the spot.
It did, but I thought, oh well, there's always the old lady voice that can come out, and that I thought of that from that very scene, one of the old women. So
You sound like a nun. I don't know why. You just sounded like a nun.
so it's yeah, that was a ton of fun to get to do.
All right. So, what is the most difficult part to write? So, for me, it is really tough to write the actual spellcraft. It'll often take an
Really?
entire writing session to just write the crafting, and to figure out how Dixon is going to uncraft the spell. So, for people who haven't read it yet, um, Spellcraft is just a small, concise greeting card size sentiment that holds magic of some sort. And if you have one that you want to take back, you can't just tear it up, or else that might destroy it, or it might set the magic harder. So what you technically need to do is turn it into something else, and then once that works, you can get rid of it. And so Dixon, the main character, his particular skill lies in altering things that are already in play to then switch them off and get rid of them. And it's really hard. And he thinks on the fly a heck of a lot better than I do. I have to use like Scrabble dictionaries, and I have to write it out and then see what letters could be turned into something else. And it's laborious. And I think and I make it look like it's kind of like Dixon thinks about it for a moment and says, "Oh, here's what I can do," and it's like, yeah, and it took me about 5 hours to come up with it. So that's the hardest part, but it's not unsatisfying. It's just a very picky and important piece of the puzzle.
In a way, you are working spellcraft yourself by doing that. Uh, without giving plot stuff away for those who have not yet read or listened to it, um, there's a series of very short craftings that turn up as the arc goes forward, um, and those short one word craftings are very specific, very flowery language. Did how hard were those to find? Did you
Oh, that
just
was easy. I
intuitively
could just
know?
whip open
That
a
was easy. Okay.
thesaurus. Yeah, I
Okay.
could whip open a thesaurus and figure those. And I think I have one I can even show you. So I don't use a regular thesaurus. What I use are like library discard thesauruses that are 60 to 70 years old, because I know that they'll give me a super weird word
Hmm.
instead of just the normal word you would think of.
I have always loved language and odd. I was so proud of myself looking through some of those and knowing the word outright. And there were a couple I didn't, but there was was it effulgent? There was one that I knew the word, and I was aha! I know what that is. Very very proud moment. With voicing, the most difficult character I think I ran into was Fonzo, was Uncle Fonzo, and finding we talked about this a little in one of the earlier videos, I think, but finding his humanity and his wiliness and linking those together into someone who could be lovable and yet a complete rapscallion was very tricky and a lot of fun, and I think it came through, but was that was that took several takes, but I think made its way there.
Is there anything that you have to do to get yourself into like the headspace of a certain character before you read? Like, do you have to do anything to shift into Uncle Fonzo, or is it just a matter of like knowing he's coming and you can click in?
It depends on the character. Some of them, Dixon's very easy to just flip right into. Um, one thing that will help with some characters, and with Yuri I did this. I don't think with Fonzo I did, but with Yuri I did. You can have trigger phrases when you're switching into a dialect or into a mindset that can that's a phrase that's something that only that character would say. There's nobody else who would say that. And by saying that in that dialect, it can help you switch over into whatever the correct voice or correct sound might be without risking pulling something else out. And I wish I remember what Yuri's trigger phrase
Oh.
was. I have it written down. I don't immediately remember it off the top
Oh,
of my
now
head.
we're all going to want to know.
Oh no, I'll see. I'll track it down and I'll post it in the comments.
Okay.
That's something that helps a lot. Or sometimes it's a matter of reading through in the closest attempt of that voice, going through a couple paragraphs of it, and then restarting and saying, okay, now I'm in it, sort of warming up into that voice. Now I'm in it, and going from there, which was another trick for Yuri that helped a lot.
This seems to really segue actually into another one of the questions we had, which was how do you edit or correct your recordings?
That is a long process. The editing is longer than the recording process, I think. I use a program called Reaper, which is probably more bells and whistles than you would need strictly to do just voiceover stuff, but I'm used to it for other reasons, so it's that's the one I use. But a lot of folks will use Audacity or GarageBand. Those are all perfectly valid. And I record into, for me it's Reaper, I record into the software. It shows me a waveform, and I will go back through when I am doing the recording. If there's something that I know didn't work, then I will stop, give myself a clean start, and then continue back into it. If there's something that I find while listening to it that didn't work, I will listen to where I was in the audio so that I can try to match that tone and match that inflection, because we were saying, I think off air, there's very different ways of saying the greeting card moment of, I'm so sorry, I'm blanking now.
It doesn't have to rhyme.
It doesn't have to rhyme, which could just be, it doesn't have to rhyme, or doesn't have to rhyme, or there's different.
Doesn't have to rhyme.
Doesn't have to rhyme. Yeah. There's a bunch of different ways to say that. So I would need to listen to where I was and get that moment back. But it's an interesting process to hear where I am at the end of a book. I have to make sure that the dialects or the voice hasn't gone completely off the rails, and sometimes that does happen. And then I don't think it happened with this one, but sometimes I will have to go back and say, well, this I really thought I had a German accent, but he somehow turned Italian by the end of it, so I guess we better redo that. And sometimes that happens, and that's a fix that you then have to go back and do.
Actually, I just thought of one of my favorite parts, hearing you read it, was when Emery Flint is checking to see if Dixon is under his spell or not. And he says, "Who do you work for?" And Dixon says, "Wheel meal." Who do you work for? Wheel meal?
Who do
you work for?
That's an old stage acting joke, and there are just any given phrase like that. You can put the emphasis on any word, and it completely changes and Dixon's reaction to that too is, before he could do anything else, before he could further mangle this sentence, I think I'll just I'm leaving now. Bye. Glad we had this talk. Uh,
Let's see if there are any more questions that we need to get to. Well, you had really sort of some other technical ones about your recording sessions themselves.
yeah, the kind of unsatisfying answer to how long is a session and how does that go? The answer is it depends. And that's I know not the most satisfying thing in the world. It depends. There's also a question here about training and vocal care, and those kind of go together. Um, Doing voices, there are right ways and wrong ways to do them. There's a voice that I don't think made it into Spellcraft, but that has this sort of grittiness that sometimes I can use. Ooh, excuse me, and see, just did it there. Where there's a right way and a wrong way to do that, and the right way is placing the voice forward, and it's kind of living in what we call the mask right here, and you're not actually causing damage to your cords. But you could also put it back here. Oops, see, I can't even do that. That hurts the throat. And before I learned that through trial and error, I did create that sort of voice in the throat, which meant I had to take a ton of breaks because I would do 2 minutes of it and I couldn't talk.
Wow.
So you learn to make character voices in a healthy way. And something I'll say to my students is if you're doing a character voice, make sure you can do it all day long. It shouldn't be something that you can just do for 1 or 2 little barks. It's got to be something that you could continue all day without hurting yourself, because otherwise you're doing, even if it's just incremental, you're doing some damage that you don't want to do. But if you wear yourself out, take a break. Take 10 minutes, 15 minutes, an hour, whatever it is. Don't push through that and risk damaging your voice, because then you're shot for longer. Take the break you need, hydrate, all that good stuff.
Well, and it's pretty safe to say that if I have a wacky character and I think I can use them again, chances are they're going to pop up 2 or 3
Yep.
books later.
Yep,
So
absolutely.
I have a question here that says, do you have plans for the return of any secondary characters from the first volume when you write the second? And it's like, oh yeah, all the time, because it's more fun to have somebody pop up and you realize, oh, you knew them before and they have a history. So absolutely, yeah, sure, because
Well,
they're funny, and it would be sad to let them go to waste.
yeah, there was I won't say who, but there was one, unless you want me to. There was one sort of throwaway-ish character in particular who, in the audio script of it, you said, remember this voice, we're probably going to bring this person back, and it hasn't happened yet, but
Now I wonder who it was. No, don't say.
Okay. There was one of those, so that's in the back of my mind. But yeah, that's something that is, I'm sure, really rewarding for the readers and or listeners to say, oh yeah, this is someone who was mentioned all the way back in whatever book, and here they are again.
Yeah, I think it's fun. It's almost like a cameo, or like a cameo by an old favorite, or like it's almost as if you could go in reverse and you planted a cameo of someone early on who was like a throwaway person, and then it turns out like, oh wait, they own the whole city, or something goofy like that. That actually doesn't happen. It's just something I made up.
Well, now you can use it. No. Let's see. We got. There was another one here I know I wanted to touch on for me. Oh, have I done mystery romance stuff before? I haven't. This is the first romance book that I've done. I have done mystery stuff before. So even though Jordan, you say you've got this geared more toward cozy, at least in your mind, than in the romance genre. There is
Paranormal cozy specifically.
Paranormal cozy,
yeah.
Which is a new genre for me, but cozy I've done, paranormal I have not, and romance I have not. But there's so much overlap here that I get to play with sort of known tricks and known things from my bag of tricks, but then also playing with new things because this is a romance scene, great, never done that before, and see how that pans out and learning new stuff. So this is been a really great sort of bridge for me to cross.
Yeah, I'm surprised about the romance because your romantic scenes seem so authentic, and
Thank you.
to have Ann Dixon is a goofball,
Yeah.
and to have him sort of shift his tone just a little bit, and I think you shift his pacing a lot too when you dip into the romantic scene. He goes serious, and it's totally authentic, and I totally believe it.
Well, it's all about finding that vulnerability from both of them. The Dixon is legitimately a goofball, but that's also I think, I mean, you can speak to this more than I can, I'm sure, but to me that's sort of a safe space for him. He knows that he knows how to be that goofy personality that's not scary. But shifting into being intimate and romantic with someone can be a little scarier, and he has to drop that drop those, it's not even a mask, but go into a more vulnerable place. And Yuri especially finding the, as opposed to just casual sex, which was the best he could hope for in Russia, finding true intimacy in someone who loves him for who he is terrifying and beautiful and exciting. And I love delving into it. It's great.
I can't think of a better place to end up because that was just so gorgeous. So
Thank you.
you so much for chatting with us. And oh, and everybody always asks if there's going to be more. And
Yes.
I presume if you're up and speaking and available, that I can talk you into doing more. So
Absolutely,
yes,
absolutely.
there will be more.
I certainly look forward to it.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jordan. Thank you, everyone, for watching.